The Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty on climate change adopted by 196 parties in Paris in the year 2015. It aims to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. The agreement provides a framework for financial, technical, and capacity building on climate change. However, there are capacity gaps in the global south that hinders achievement of the Paris Agreement and climate-compatible development. In this context, the African Center for Technology Studies has developed a demand-driven climate action training program intended to address these gaps.
Climate change discourses are built on a few Paris Agreement issues, and mainly the few issues that are being addressed in the Paris Agreement is building technology frameworks, creating financing mainly for the developing countries, and 3, building capacity building. ACT has been building capacity in different forums, but mainly when it comes to trainings are always offered on traditional methods where you just give a course based on a project, but one thing that is lacking is the need-based kind of training. The demand-driven training program or the virtual academy was developed to fill this gap, where the trainings that are offered are going to be based on the needs of the people and what the need people ask. That means that the solution that we are giving you isn't something that is coming from the project owners, but coming from the people building solution. The solutions that we are offering are 3. 1, we are going to have training of trainers. 2, training of professionals and other people. And 3, we are going to have the virtual academy. There you have an opportunity to have 2 things. 1, the synchronous learning, which you would say a live learning. You learn as you go. Number 2, asynchronous learning, which is self-learning. So you learn at your pace. Even if you are not able to get the learning materials at this moment, you can learn when you have the time. That means everyone is catered for.
It includes courses on youth engagement in disaster risk reduction and climate change action, steps to climate action, climate finance, climate leadership and policy, climate technology, and climate modeling.
To develop this virtual academy, we have identified a few courses that were based on the needs that we had identified in the continent. We had a survey that we gave out to the continental people, sent it out to different climate professionals. But once they gave us their feedback, they had a few need areas. A project called CAPSET, that is building capacity building of technical institutions in the Comesa region, build the basis for the virtual academy in a way that as we were trying to reach out to institutions, 2 institutions were shortlisted. That is, one is in Ethiopia, the Ethiopian Forest Development, and the Environment, Climate and Sustainable Development Institute. Within this institute, they gave us also a few need areas. So these need areas build our basis for the first set of modules that we are going to be offering. And which modules do you have to expect in this time first round? 1, we are going to have climate financing, where we'll be learning a few things on climate finance and innovating financial instruments. And number 2, we are going to have climate modeling, which is more practical. Number 3, we are going to have climate technology, where we are going to look at different technologies in mitigation and adaptation for climate action. You should expect a course on DRR and climate action for engagement. So those are some of the things you should look for in the virtual academy. But every year we'll be offering new courses, but these new courses are always going to be need-based. So that means we are always going to do a needs assessment to just gather the views of the people. What are your needs and what are your problems and what do you need to be offered and what do you need to what solution do you want for these problems?
The course on climate finance is intended to enhance knowledge on innovative financing instruments and access to local, regional, and multilateral funds.
The climate finance module will focus on a number of topics. One of the topics, we have fundamentals of climate finance, which basically will introduce the learners to the introduction to climate finance, the evolution of climate finance over the years. Another topic that we'll have will be on climate finance landscape. Basically, this will entail climate finance architecture at the global level, regional level, and at the national level. And then we shall also be looking at some of the financial access mechanisms that can be used by countries to be able to access these funds. Then also the topic will delve into the financial instruments that can be used also to mobilize finances. And apart from the traditional financial instruments such as grants, concessional loans that have been adopted in the past, we'll also look at some of the innovative financial instruments that are now emerging that can be used to mobilize resources for climate finance. Then another topic will also be looking at tracking and monitoring, tracking and reporting of climate finance methodologies. So we shall be looking at general tracking and reporting methodologies of climate finance, and we shall also be looking at tracking and reporting methodologies from a gender perspective. Another lesson that we shall have is on roadmap towards transformative climate finance. Basically here we'll be able to demonstrate to learners some of the evaluation frameworks that they can use. They'll be able to learn about the climate finance landscape and to have a clear understanding of which funds are available to be able to support climate actions depending on their geographical location. They'll be able also to understand how they can prepare adequately to access some of these climate finance funds. They'll also be able to understand which financial instruments are used.
Existing climate finance tracking systems in Africa and across the globe, they're really not inclusive in terms of tracking of climate finance that are really targeted to to gender aspects. This has reduced resource mobilization for gender aspects in the climate change space, and therefore there is a need for people to be trained, or rather to be explored to different pathways or different systems that can be used to track both climate finance as well as to track gender aspects or gender-related climate finance. Existing climate change frameworks, or rather climate change policies in globally and even regionally, it really recognizes the double mainstreaming of climate change as well as gender. And there's pronounced efforts in terms of incorporating gender into climate actions, but there is little communication or even transparency of how gender has been incorporated in the climate finance space. Therefore, this course is very, very critical, whereby it exposes you to understand all these dimensions, all these systems that can be used or can also enhance transparency.
Youth engagement in disaster risk reduction and climate change action aims to empower the learners with knowledge on how to reduce and manage disasters, how they occur, prevention mechanisms, and examples of how countries have used specific tools to address disasters.
Something that is really coming out of this module is that there is that linkage between the two, because not all disasters are directly linked to climate change, but majority of the disasters are climate related. So this module that is being touted by ACTS is a module that is unique in its own way, because we, apart from understanding just what is climate action, what is disaster risk reduction, how do we link the two? The module itself, of course, we will have to introduce you to what is disaster risk reduction and climate change, and we are going to kind of like define the key terms under the DRR and climate action. Then we are going to look at the key concepts that help like a risk or a tragedy to be classified as a disaster or a climate-related emergency. Then we are going to delve deeper. What are the opportunities for young people? What are the challenges that they're facing, and how do we turn those challenges into opportunities for them to engage deeper? Then we trickle down and we say, hey, how do we develop the roadmap? How do we develop plans? How do we develop strategic plans on how we respond to disaster risk reduction? What is the roadmap? What are the actions that we need to undertake when you are trying to manage, or we are trying to be part and parcel under the DRR and climate action. Is an opportunity for young people at least to come and first of all, because some of the lessons are like we are trying to define what is disaster risk reduction and what is climate action, and how does the two correlate or marry into each other. Then the other thing we're trying to look at, what are the concepts? How do you young people get engaged in this conversation? What are the opportunities that arise out of this? So this module is very, very important, should you ask me, because there has been a lot of capacity building issues on climate change and all those things, but there has been a lacking on the specific that targets young people. Because yes, if I know what is the definition of disaster risk reduction or climate action, I need to go to the next step now of what are the concepts that underpin these two topics, and what are the plans of living with them or managing them so that we do not suffer so much the impacts. The selection of, or the targeting of young people to be part and parcel under this module is very much timely, because we need to engage or upscale the youth involvement in disaster risk reduction and climate action. If you are young people, if you are a young person out there, whether you are an expert working in climate change and DRR, whether you are just a person doing your own business, private business, this module is really, really key for you.
Climate modeling is focused on practical skills in climate modeling and how to manipulate different data types. It is expected that the demand-driven climate action training program will help address the capacity gaps in the Global South and contribute to the achievement of the Paris Agreement and climate-compatible development.
For these problems. So looking forward to meeting every one of you in the virtual academy. Let us interact. We will be advertising for every single at every step. So let us interact during the virtual academy, and feel free to join in and learn more on climate change as we create a space for climate training and education, but as well building governance and advocacy in the climate change space.